It's been a very long talk already. And I want to find some way to kind of round up and talk about the present day and the question of heritage and community, right? So I can ask you more generally, and you can answer any way you want, which is how does this history of Tamil migration and social reform in Singapore, how does this help or shape the Tamil identity today? How does it help us to understand the Tamils today?
It's all very difficult questions.
It's a very easy question because it's general. You can answer any way you like.
I think the
Yeah.
history of Tamil migration, particularly of settlement, um, how the community negotiated the terms of settlement, how it put itself down as, or not how it put itself, how it put its roots down as a community,
Mm,
um, the initiatives that followed in terms of uplift, in terms of representation. All of this is a story of extreme resilience in the face of overwhelming odds,
mm,
right? Here was a community that had to fight multiple layers and levels of marginalization to be taken seriously, to take itself seriously. And it's something we take for granted today by and large because we don't really delve into this aspect of community history. I think
mm,
it's very easy to look at our leadership today. Our president is of Tamil descent.
mm,
We have had former President S.R. Nathan, also of Tamil descent. We have several ministers, who are all of Tamil lineage. And we tend to forget, I think, the kind of struggles it took to have this fighting chance at progress, at equality, at empowerment, all of that. Um, and I think while a lot of the post independence story is known in terms of the structures, the kind of institutions and processes that the state put in place for the betterment of all communities, regardless of race, language, religion,
mm,
what happened before that that set the groundwork for what came after?
mm,
Right? The kind of organizations, the kind of grassroots pressure for change, for representation, which enabled the changes that came post 65 remain underexplored.
yeah.
But I think that is where the story of resilience really comes through.
Mm,
Um, it's very striking for me to look at the kind of initiatives that came up, for instance, in the front of education, the
mm,
kind of efforts that went into establishing Tamil schools, how much the Singapore Education Society struggled with the colonial authorities to get these institutions up and running, how very often they had to put up with dilapidated, buildings which served as the physical infrastructure for schools. They had to make something out of nothing. Today, we have a
mm,
situation where Tamil is taught in government schools, in most schools, right? With the exception of SAP schools, most schools offer Tamil language. And so it becomes difficult to conceive of a past where
mm.
the right to education was not granted, could not be taken for granted, where it had to be fought for. Um, but I think this story, the story of settlement, should remind us of how hard a fight it has been,
Mm.
uh, how much struggle has gone into making the Tamil language and identity what it is today.
How are these stories, right, of struggle, how are they relevant to Tamils today? What are the issues that the Tamil community faces today? Are they facing the similar issues of language? Are they facing similar issues of employment and economic challenges?
I think those who have done well have done really well.
Mm,
Um, and so there is a parallel that might be discerned in history or from history and what we see today. Um, So those who are educated, who have reaped, or rather who have reaped the benefits of development, of modernity, progress, have done really well. But there are also those who remain in need of support. And that's on the one hand, right?
Mm,
Within the local population, there are disparities in terms of income, in terms of socioeconomic status. But then there is also, I think, a concern or an anxiety that present with foreign workers, many
mm,
of whom are from the subcontinent, many of whom are Tamils. And here again, there is a historical parallel that presents, as I mentioned earlier, the leaders of the community back then were anxious about being treated with the same broad brushstroke that the state used to look at working class compatriots. And I think there remains very much a sense, even if it is largely unspoken, there is very much a sense among Tamils that engaging too much with the language or culture runs the risk of being seen as no different from,
mm.
a certain segment of the population, right? Itinerant laborers. And I think that is one of the complexities that still presents with reference to the relationship between India and Singapore, right? How do we grapple with new waves of migration? And here again, there are
Yeah.
those who have done really well for themselves among the new
Mm,
migrants, and then there are those who come in as laborers. And while their, contributions to the nation are very important, are hugely significant, the class factor and the stigma that unfortunately attaches to the class factor means that younger generations of Singaporean Tamils, in my observations at least, uh, that makes them, in a sense, hesitant or reticent to engage with the language and culture as comfortably
mm.
as they otherwise would.
I mean, that's a bit surprising to hear, right? Like, because our engagement with language also comes through, the popular media,
Mhm.
through the education system, and sometimes it's very close to one's identity, right? The language you use. How is that so badly affected by the presence of a group of workers?
It's
You
not
know?
just one factor. So it is
Yeah.
ambivalent,
Okay.
it is tense, and it is complex. So,
Mm,
identity is equally shared by popular culture, media, certainly.
mm, mm,
But this notion of the Mabuk Indian, for instance, the Mabuk Tamil, right, the drunk Tamil. So if we were to think about the Little India riot and its
mm-hmm,
aftermath, that
mm,
has served, unfortunately, to unfairly, legitimize a lot of these stereotyping, a lot of this profiling that has historically taken place and that has, as mentioned, historically also found a place in colonial policy, right? A lot of these developments involving the migrant workforce has served to bring back these aspects of racial profiling, which the
mm,
community has had to grapple with. And again, then there becomes this difficult process of soul searching and this notion of where is us? How do we draw the lines between us and them?
mm, mm,
Given the cultural proximity, given the linguistic proximity, and there are no
mm.
easy answers here.
I was going to ask you for one.
For
What would be an answer?
for an answer, I
Yeah.
think
Is
again, yeah.
is
Um,
history able to provide some answer here?
Definitely. I think
Mm,
history shows the importance of resilience, it shows the importance of empathy and self respect.
mm-hmm,
And I think all three are as much in order today, especially for younger generations of Tamils. who I think are especially caught up in this identity crisis, right? How do I position myself as more Singaporean, as more Tamil, as less Tamil? I think looking to the past and looking to how the community grappled with those same questions, albeit in a different context,
Mm,
in a more difficult context, actually, would hopefully provide hope and optimism for their own struggles with identity going forward.
mm. What does a Tamil person feel if, like, English educated person, right? And they hear two Tamil speaking in Tamil. What would they? What would be their response or their thinking?
Yeah, I've been on the end of a great deal of surprise
Mm,
often when people hear me speak Tamil. And that the first
mm,
thing that they would say, or
mm,
one of the things that they would say is, I thought you had a PhD from
mm,
Cambridge.
mm, mm,
I was like, yes. And why is that surprising? But you speak Tamil so well. So the unspoken assumption tends to be that if one is cosmopolitan, if one is modern in their outlook,
mm,
then they would not be comfortable or they should not be engaging with the Tamil language, which is seen as, unfortunately, which is seen as um, traditional, as classical. But this is a matter of pride because it is one of the oldest classical languages, surviving classical languages known
mm,
to humankind.
mm,
Right? But unfortunately, that aspect of history appears by and large to have been lost amidst all of the anxiety that has been caused by more recent developments.
mm.
And recent,
Interesting.
when viewed through a very sort of short term lens of what we see around us, class differences,
Mm.
etc.
Can I ask you what is the standard generally of Tamil in Singapore? I mean, I would say preface that by saying the standard of Mandarin among the Chinese is really bad, right?
Yes.
Compared to, let's say, like a genuinely Mandarin speaking country like China or Taiwan or even Malaysia, right? What is the level of Tamil among the proficiency among the Tamils?
I would say it is similar to the Chinese
Mm-hmm.
situation.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think Harold Schiffman, he's from the University of Pennsylvania. Yes, I believe. Let me just check that later and I can confirm that for you.
Mm,
Um, but he has a paper on the different registers that present with spoken and written registers of Tamil in Singapore. And his argument, and it's one that I agree with, is that the standard of written Tamil, which is established, of course, by the Ministry of Education, which is upheld by all the national examination systems we have, is excellent.
mm,
The spoken component, um, and here the ministry has been trying to address this by increasing the weightage of oral Tamil, spoken Tamil in oral examinations, etc., uh, in assessments, in national examinations. But Schiffman's argument is that the spoken aspect remains or trails behind because, you know, younger generations of Singaporeans only use the language
uh,
when absolutely need to in classroom settings or in academic settings and not otherwise. They might choose to use it when with a close peer group of similarly, like-minded Tamil, fellow students. But by and large, beyond the setting of the family home, if that, a lot of families are actually very Anglophone if we were to look at the Tamil population.
mm,
Beyond these settings, the tendency to use Tamil is not very much seen in younger generations, is his argument. And it's something
mm,
that,
mm,
that I would agree with.
mm, mm. So this allows us to kind of also link up with the last part, right, of the podcast, which is on the new citizens and recent migrants. Is this also true, right? The level of Tamil proficiency, especially the speaking, of this group of more recent arrivals to Singapore?
That it is true that of not
That they are
being
spoke they often don't speak well, or they don't speak Tamil very much.
I think by and large, the
Mm.
comfort with the language is greater among newer waves of migrants as opposed to locals. Although there is a growing shift there too towards being more proficient in English.
So they would rarely use Tamil.
No, I wouldn't say that. Actually, I
Mm.
think in the home setting at least, the tendency is
Mm.
to switch more to using both languages, primarily Tamil with English, interspersed with Tamil, more so than local Singaporean Tamil families, which tend to largely be Anglophone, except in
Mm. Mm.
exceptional cases.
Yeah. Can I find out more about the kind of social, economic, and cultural profile of the newer immigrants? I mean, what kind of jobs would they be in generally?
So they often tend to be middle class migrants,
Mm.
upper middle class being the general sort of trend. They come in being employed in a range of industries, but particularly as IT professionals. Banking is another industry which
Mm.
sees large numbers of arrivals from the Tamil regions or Tamil Nadu.
So the question of integration, right, which I talked about with Ulas Kumar about the Malayalis, he gave a very interesting answer about um, the issues in integration and the ways that this could be achieved. Have there been much integration or true integration between the newer migrants and the settled local community?
I think often when we speak of integration, we tend to have very high expectations of what an integrated sort of population would look like. I mean, I would even ask if there is integration among Singaporeans, but not
Mm-hmm.
sure if you want to feature
Of
this.
course not.
You know,
Sometimes, in some ways.
yes, so I think from my experience, by and large, we move in our own circles.
Mm.
Singaporean Tamils with Singaporean Tamils, more recent arrivals in their respective, circles. But because language is a shared factor, I
Mm.
think um, integration is not impossible. But
Mm.
I think the terms of what we mean by integration and expectations on both sides need to be more realistic. I
Yeah.
think for Singaporeans, it's very easy to say, why don't you assimilate and be like us?
Mm.
Because, we don't have to worry about the work of assimilation. We're already here, we've been here. We don't need to change our ways. And again, I think that's a majority sort of prejudice,
Mm.
you
Mm.
know, um,
Mm.
mentality that is at work there. The work is always harder for those who have to put down roots because they come in not knowing many people beyond the immediate network who happens to also come from the same places from which they migrated. And so, and also natural human tendency is to stick with what is comfortable and familiar to us. So I think if it is integration we seek, then it needs to be integration on equal terms, and Singaporeans also need to make the effort to reach out
Mm.
to more recent arrivals and show them that this is a place where everyone can find something to call home.
Are there, I mean, one of the places where this kind of reaching out can take place at the community organization level? Uh, are there local and recent migrants meeting in this, in community organizations, in Tamil organizations?
I think yes, and religious
Mm. Mm.
establishments,
Mm.
also serve as meeting points. Temples serve as
Mm.
meeting
Mm.
points. Alumni networks and serve as meeting points. For instance, I'm married to, a relatively recent migrant, new citizen,
Mm. Not a Tamil, right? It's not
not Tamil.
Tamil.
No. But he belongs to, or he was a former student and alumni of the Indian Institute of Technology, and they have a very sort of vibrant presence here. So that
Mm,
those networks also serve to, well, they serve to ensure that, the connections between recent migrants remain strong, but at the same time, because they hold all sorts of events. For instance, recently they hosted an event for migrant workers to learn,
mm,
basic computer skills. Because they have such events which are open to members of the public to join in as volunteers as well, that also serves as a meeting point, possibly for these connections to happen. But for that um, to happen, as mentioned, I think there needs to be openness on both sides
mm.
to reach out.
I guess the opportunity is not there, right? Because most locals do not join these kinds of networks or organizations, and they don't see any need to.
That's right.
So, to some extent, do you think this is a moot point, anyways, a non-issue? Because usually the first generation may struggle, or they might keep to their own community, and then the children usually assimilate, right?
That's right.
the, the
Yes,
the
I think
children,
yes. I think the
uh,
hope lies with our children. The future rests with our children, and if there is any hope of assimilation, I think, or integration, as if integration is more suitable than assimilation, I think the best chances of that happening are in our schools. And in that regard, I think
mm,
my children's experiences have been quite heartwarming. Because a
mm,
number of their friends are new citizens, and they are able to interact and mingle without any of this baggage, without any of the kind of expectations that
mm.
attach to us as adults.
Well, just give them time to be corrupted, you know.
Well,
um,
interestingly, I
yeah.
recently came across this article on this Indian newsletter, Tabla, pop culture. It covers all sorts of issues, Tabla.
Mm,
But the headline read, "Not just here to take away our jobs," and that that made me do a double
mm,
take and look at the fine print. I think what they were looking to do was to say these people are not here to take away our jobs,
mm.
but the just, gave the wrong message and the wrong impression. But I think a lot of the underlying assumption that attaches to how we respond to new migrants is this factor that they are here to take away employment opportunities.
Yeah.
They hold it above us. That they look down on us because they come from higher socioeconomic status. Either that, or they come as blue collar workers,
Yeah.
and there is a certain stigma that attaches to that. And so I think this again is ambivalent. There is tension here in how we respond to arrivals from more recent arrivals from India, China. Uh, I
Yeah.
think that as I don't think it will ever be settled actually.
Mm. Yeah, I mean that's a very interesting point because I always look at economic issues, right?
Mm,
So that sentence, right, not here to take away your jobs, is very
mm.
telling. And it suggests that the issues are really quite deep seated.
Yes.
That it's not enough to just talk about culture and language and things like that. But on the other hand, we are a free market society,
Mm,
with certain limited or selective intervention by the
mm.
government. Do you think there is any way in which there can be some kind of regulation or control of or management of these economic issues, right, at the job level, so that a lot of these tensions between the locals and the migrants can be reduced?
I think short of having protectionist measures in place,
Mm,
right? I don't see any workaround for this.
mm,
One possible way is, for more intermarriages to take place between the older diaspora and new migrants, like my own. I'm speaking from my own experience here, not by design, it just so happened. Um, but other than that, I think the tensions, if we were to call
Mm,
them tensions, could be managed if we were to accept that, a lot of the kind of prejudices which we accuse, better placed migrant um friends of exhibiting, we ourselves show to those who are not in as good a position as we are in. Right? We have the same prejudices ourselves that we
mm,
show to uh, blue collar workers, for instance.
yeah,
So I think having that recognition might help in
yeah.
managing expectations as well.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with you, right? You need to be self-aware. But the thing is, when you tell someone you should be self-aware, it becomes like preaching already. It really defeats the
That's true.
purpose, right?
That's true.
So,
But
yeah,
ultimately, it boils down to human nature, and you know how I
yeah.
think it's always a matter of self-interest. Yeah,
Can I just ask you, right, as a way of ending, how do you, at your own personal level, with your husband and his family and relatives, how do you reconcile these kind of tensions which must exist, right, at your personal
Mm.
level? How do you and him? It must be him too, right? How do both of you reconcile who you are, and the divides? How do you try to bridge the divides? How do you
Mm.
try to be self-aware?
I think it's always a matter of trial and error.
Yeah.
I think also recognizing that some kind of tension will always be present in human relationships,
Mm,
and that's what makes us human. Also helps in managing expectations. So the specifics of the tension might differ based on nationality, it might differ based on caste, language, region, class, and there are differences in all of these fronts for us, for instance. But you know that even if it were not for any of these factors,
mhm.
just the fact of two people having to coexist would already lead to tension, as it were. So understanding that then makes it easier uh, to cope with. I will not say that there will be no challenges, but it makes it easier to cope with tensions when they do arise, because you already slot it within the familiar realm of there are going to be problems, and this is one such problem.
I mean, like, so let's say you are kind of frustrated, right, at the other party. How do you kind of step back from that and be self-aware?
Sure.
How do you step into their shoes? And how do you also encourage them to have this trust with you, right? That they can do the
Mm.
same also, and you are both doing it, and not that only one party is being made to do it.
Yes. So I
How do
think,
you how do you do this in your family? Tell us about some
uh,
of your strategies.
yeah. So like I said, I don't know.
Mm.
It's ongoing.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but I think it goes back to the basics, the fundamentals, and one such thing is understanding that there are differences in how we communicate. I think in Singapore, a lot of us who are born here, raised here, are used to disagreeing in silence. So we
Mm-hmm.
may not agree, but
Yeah,
we're not
yeah,
vocal about our
yeah,
disagreement.
yeah, yeah. But Indians in the world are not like that, right?
No, they are not. In fact, you know that there is this book, The Argumentative Indian, for a good
Yeah,
reason,
yeah,
because a lot of the way their politics is, the way
yeah.
society is structured, a lot of it pivots on robust debate, argumentation,
Mm-hmm.
and disagreeing, and actually taking extreme positions in many things by way of pushing the point across. So I think understanding that there are these differences in communication certainly
Mm,
helps, and putting this up at a less tense time. So when things
mm,
calm down a
mm,
little bit, pointing out that there are these differences in how we communicate and we need to be mindful of this will help. And not just in terms of family dynamics, but in terms of what we expect of more recent migrants as well. I think the first step is to understand that. they come from a different place in terms of how they communicate, and it's not because they're more aggressive. It's because the context is different, the society setup is different, and so we are equally alien to them when viewed
Mm,
through that lens. So I think understanding that then helps us understand the responses as well, and over time it becomes easier to meet them halfway in communication. So for instance, for me, that has
mm,
meant actually becoming more vocal with my disagreement and not
mm.
internalizing it, which is helpful as well.
Yeah, we are all screwed, isn't it? But the last 30, 40, 60 years of social engineering to keep quiet, and not get into trouble.
True, true. Which is great for
Yeah.
here, but if we were to move anywhere else, it becomes a problem because people think we're okay with things when we are not.
Mm, mm. Yeah. So thank you very much, Darini. It's been wonderful talking to you for over 2 hours. It's now dinner time. And I want to thank you and congratulate you for showing your argumentative side to come onto the podcast to,
Not sure I did, but okay.
debunk the myth of the docile Indian and to help us think also like about, how we can always be more reflexive,
Mm,
be more self-aware. History is one of the humanities that allows us to do so,
absolutely.
and knowing the history of the Tamils in Singapore and even history in general, right, helps us to understand ourselves as well as other people
Yes,
better.
absolutely.
Thank you very much, Darini.
Thank you, Kasing.
Okay, okay. See you
You
soon.
take
See you
care.
soon.
Take care. See
Take
you.
care. Bye.